We've been talking about Monte McNair, Ramie, for several months, his contract situation. And why in the world he was not signed to a contract extension was kind of beyond all of us. We couldn't really figure out why that would be the case. I thought he had a terrific offseason. He brings in Mike Brown as the head coach. Usually what happens when the GM picks the new head coach, and especially if that GM is near the end of their deal, they will get a contract that matches up with the new head coach because that was the person that you picked. That is your guy or that is your gal. And so apparently the Kings are getting close to actually getting this done. And it sounds like Monty might indeed be getting his contract extension. From Marc Stein over the weekend, there is a growing expectation around the organization that an extension for McNair is indeed forthcoming and likely to be announced in early 2023. The fact it hasn't happened yet is an undeniable curiosity in league circles. So I guess we're not the only ones wondering why Monty has not gotten this extension just yet. A lot of people in the NBA are asking the same question. Let's look at it from the Kings' point of view, Ramie. Your thoughts on them reportedly getting closer to a Monty extension?
I mean, it makes sense to me, but it made sense to me months ago, Nick. You know what I mean? Like you just said. But from the Kings' point of view, I do have to wonder, like, what. And I know they've played very well to this point in the season, but we're 26 games into an 82-game season? What has happened that you went, yeah, now we need, or has this just been more of a product of the two sides going back and forth, that they have wanted to extend this marriage all along, and it was just a slow process of finding that number that they could both be happy with? Or is this performance-based? And if it's performance-based, now again, I think Monte McNair should get an extension. But if it's performance-based, you're really that much more sold on Monte McNair and this plan?
Yeah.
26 games into the season than you were before it all started? That part of it is odd to me.
I said to you guys this morning during the meeting that was my number one takeaway. Why now? Like, why is this coming up now? Look, it's not a bad thing. I think most of us, if not all of us, feel like there's no reason not to give him an extension. I mean, it's rather obvious. Again, he had a very good offseason, but the fact that, you're making this decision now after 28 games and you're saying, okay, well, now I've seen enough. Number one, did you not believe in the plan? Did you not believe in what the GM was envisioning when he put this team together? Did you not believe that Mike Brown was the right guy when this GM picked Mike Brown to be the head coach? So after 28 games, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've seen enough, and now we're going to give him the extension. I agree with you. I don't know what you could have seen. I guess if they went, 10-18 or whatever else, 8-20, then the extension would not have been talked about, and you would have just kind of played out the string the rest of this year. But it does strike me as very, very reactive. Like, oh, okay, we're off to a good start now. I can give him the extension and nobody will be mad. When in the first place, I don't think anybody would have been mad if you gave McNair the extension during the offseason. If you gave it to him when you gave Brown the contract.
If you gave it to him for the sake of, if nothing else, and this was a point Dave made in the morning early in the season, which I thought was a really good point, for the sake of stability. You know what I mean? And guys, and not just the guys that go out there and play every night or every other night, but from top to bottom, just that, hey, the ground is at least settled for now. You know what I mean? Because there's been too much of the ground moving under people's feet if you worked for the Sacramento Kings for the last, I don't know how long, and this long history of a GM inheriting a coach, and then a coach inheriting a new GM, and then a new GM inheriting a coach, and inheriting a best player, and never like sort of having that be synchronized and
no structure,
all on the same page. No structure, no stability, no consistency. I would have done it for that reason. You know
no
what?
Trust.
If it doesn't work, man, Vivek, you got enough money for all the laser beams. You would have enough money to fire Monte McNair with his new contract and hire a new GM if things really went kaboom for this team in 2022. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, when we were talking about the Mike Brown hire in the offseason, it was a big part of the conversation as far as, well, are you going to marry his contract with Monty's contract? Because if Monty is the guy making the call, and reportedly Monty was 100% the guy who made this call, then it just makes sense because you don't want to get into that endless cycle. And we had that conversation multiple times before the hire was made and then after the hire was made, because it's the worst thing that you can do. You're just constantly resetting, because when you have the GM leave after this year, if that's what happened, you'd have the head coach, and then whoever the new GM is, do they mesh with Mike Brown, which made me wonder at a certain point. We never got to this on the show, but I had said this a month or two ago. Was it a Wes Wilcox thing where maybe they said to themselves the fallback plan would be Wes because he was part of the coaching search, and that way you would still have some kind of synergy between the front office and the coaching staff. But that has not been handled in the right way here in Sacramento for a number of years. And this contract extension, whenever it gets done, if we believe Marc Stein, and Marc Stein's one of the best in the business, if this contract extension gets done soon, then you finally feel like there is some ground that is settled underneath the foundation and this organization. And you feel like, okay, we can now move forward. I wonder if the risk of losing Monty was worth it. I mean, I do wonder. You don't know how guys are going to react. Like, yeah, it's great that Monty, by all accounts, has handled this professionally, and he's going to end up getting his extension. But if, you don't know how somebody's going to react, and you might have risked Monty's future with this franchise by waiting to give him this extension. What if Monty did what others have done in sports and say, I'm not negotiating during the season.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about my contract during the season. If he pulled that card out and you're looking at, a successful beginning of the year and you want to get this deal done, but he doesn't, that would have been interesting. I would also say this. My final thought is, look, it's great to give him an extension, but the most crucial part of all of this is that ownership stays out of the way. Let Monty be the GM. You are giving him the extension. You're giving him the extension because he's done a very good job. He has put you in a position now to be 16-12 to start this season. You get a lot of good vibes around this team. You certainly have the most talented team you've had in a decade, if not more. Now you've got to let him continue this job, continue this voyage. Don't meddle. If something happens to go wrong over the next few weeks, don't all of a sudden jump back in and do what you've done in the past.
Let me ask you this. If you're the guy with the pocketbook,
yeah,
and you're the one who's
which I am certainly not that
handing
guy.
out.
This seems like a cash grab.
You're the one who's handing out these extensions. And I'm not asking Nick Cattles. I'm saying you're the guy with the pocketbook. And 28 games ago,
yeah,
you didn't believe in Monte McNair as a GM enough to give him a contract extension. Is it? Could you possibly have seen enough in 28 games to convince you? Because it's not like they had something last year where you were like, this is close. I just need to see a little bit more. This is almost an entire reset on the Kings in terms of the roster he's put together, hiring a new coach. Like, if for me to be sold on an entirely new plan in 28 games, not entirely. You started the plan last year when you traded for Domas and paired him up with Fox. But you look at the other major pieces and major players in this, from Mike Brown to his entire coaching staff to Keegan Murray to Malik Monk to Kevin Huerter. Like, right. He put together this entire puzzle for the most part this past offseason, and Vivek and his brain trust 28 games in are going, yeah, this is what we want, and we're willing to invest long term in it.
28 games into a season in which we thought there was a playoff mandate.
That's what I'm saying.
So you still have, 50 some odd games left. And, the last time I checked, they don't put you in the playoffs on December 19th. So
it's December.
Even though Joe Buck's excited for the month. When you look at it, it is strange. It feels like there's a little bit of a disconnect about, okay, what was really going on here and what was the plan? Because if you're going to lay down a mandate and this thing goes, public like it did, hey, you make the playoffs or you're done. To give the extension, again, we all wanted him to get the extension in the offseason.
Right.
But if you set that as kind of the mission, and you're already giving him the extension well before the mission can be accomplished, how much did the mission actually matter?
Or are you just that sold that this is a playoff team, that there's no way this thing goes wrong?
Well, hopefully that is true. But yeah, it's really early.
And
but
where's
again,
my extension for the Makloff Magic?
It's not the extension itself. It's just the idea that the extension should have been done in the offseason, and 28 games is kind of a weird benchmark to say, now I see it.